Welcome to the Motherhood Alliance podcast, the podcast dedicated to empowering moms and families on their health and wellness journey. I'm Brittany Suttner.
And I'm Andrea Rankus. Together, we're here to explore holistic approaches that go beyond conventional medicine.
Each week, we dive into topics that matter most to you, everything from nutrition and mental health to alternative therapies and natural living.
We'll bring you the expert interviews, insightful discussions, and practical tips to make motherhood a little easier and help your family thrive.
Please keep in mind that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to replace the advice, diagnosis, or treatment plans you have with your personal healthcare team. Please have a conversation with your trusted healthcare provider prior to making any changes or implementing any strategies or advice you learn from this podcast.
Whether you're a new mom navigating the early stages of parenthood or a seasoned pro looking for new ways to support your family's well-being, you're in the right place.
Here at the Motherhood Alliance podcast, we challenge the status quo, ask the tough questions, and offer a supportive community for moms who want to make an informed, holistic choice.
Thank you for joining us on this journey.
Let's get started. Hi, we are Britt and Drea from motherhoodalliance.com, and we are excited to welcome you to a 4-episode series with Sandra Carpenter, who is a board-certified, full-time classical homeopathic practitioner and the owner of Source Healing Homeopathy. So years ago, Sandy was introduced to homeopathy as she was searching for a more holistic approach to help her 2 sons. And in 2017, after a 25-plus year career as a civil engineer, she realized that homeopathy was a career she wanted to pursue, so she did the one thing she said she would never do. She went back to school. In the spring of 2021, she completed her 4-year professional homeopathic practitioner training. And that same year, she ended her engineering career and focused on her homeopathy practice full-time. Sandy knows without a doubt that homeopathy saved her family from a life dependent on medications. Her favorite quote is from Charles Rappel, who wrote, "Take the I out of illness, add we, and you have wellness." I love that. She believes strongly in working in partnership with her clients as they take control of their overall wellness and vitality, and she works with clients as young as infants all the way to elderly and everyone in between. She also has a personal interest in working with emergency first responders like law enforcement, fire dispatchers, veterans, and their families. Sandy lives in Appleton, Wisconsin with her husband Ryan and their 2 dogs, Lily and Maddox. And for this series, we recommend listening to it in order, as Sandy provides insight into what homeopathy is and how it works in episode 1, then everything you need to know about homeopathic remedies in episode 2, using homeopathy in everyday life in episode 3, and then finally raising kids with a homeopathic approach in episode 4. So the episodes do kind of build upon each other. We loved learning from Sandy, and we know that you will too. So let's dive into today's conversation. Hey, everybody, welcome. We're excited to have Sandy here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So a fun fact about you that you shared with us that I want to know a little bit more about is that you said you have an extensive collection of Calvin and Hobbes books. Tell us about why and about it. Why do you have those?
Well, I grew up in, I'm the Gen X, and I was a kid in the late 70s and 80s, and especially the mid to late 80s is when, Calvin and Hobbes was big. And that was back when the Sunday paper would print the comics and they were all in color. And there's just something about that little character and the imagination between Calvin and Hobbes and the adventures that they would go on. And looking back and reading them now as an older adult, you just see like there's this wisdom there, and like that's how I want to live my life now.
Oh,
and
perfect.
They just made me smile. They were like a comfort. I even took them with me to college.
Oh,
that's awesome. And
nice.
You have all the newspaper clippings?
I do. I actually just gave that binder to a nephew of mine.
Oh,
He's 13. Well, it just turned 14, and he's a huge Calvin and Hobbes
Really?
fan. And he likes to do his own comics. He's an amazing artist. And so I gave it to him.
Oh, that's like perfect.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
perfect.
that's so fun. I love that. I just love learning a little bit about what interests people and the funny things that we have. We each have something funny, right? Okay, so let's dive in. We're so excited to have you here because I feel like homeopathy is a topic where a lot of people are attracted to it, but they really don't know what it is and they want to learn more. So let's just start broad with what is the definition of homeopathy?
The definition of homeopathy is, if you break it down, homeos and pathos is, same suffering. So homeopathy is a system of natural medicine where the medicines, or we refer to them as remedies, their picture matches a person's specific symptom state. So it's matching a person's suffering. And it's using substances in nature that are made into very specific homeopathic medicines.
That's amazing. I love that. So tell us, like, how did homeopathy start?
Well, homeopathy started back in the late 1700s. It was Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. He was a German physician. He was a linguist. He was a chemist. And during that time, I mean, we all know enough a little bit about past history. You know, you can only imagine what medicine and the medical arts were like in the late 1700s. And he became very frustrated because people weren't getting better. You know, they were using poisons and a lot of bloodlettings and leeches and things like that. So he stepped away and decided to, you know, he just couldn't be part of it anymore. And he stumbled across some writings of another physician in another country who was using substances in nature that he knew were poisonous to treat people who had malaria. And what struck him at that time was he knew if someone took this poisonous substance, they would have a specific type of symptom state. And he realized that symptom state matched what people typically were experiencing when they had malaria. So this was the first thing that planted his idea of that matching, that sameness, right? And so he started to experiment on himself. And he started...
That was scary.
Yeah.
Right. He was a very dedicated man.
Yeah.
And so he started to experiment on himself and document all of the symptoms he would have. And he would experiment on his children and experiment on his wife. And then some other colleagues would join him. And that is what began the art of homeopathy, the medical art of homeopathy. He would take substances in nature and dilute them down, though, in order to minimize the harmful qualities of the substances, because, you know, certain substances are, you know, harmful if you take them in their crude form. And so he then brought this to the masses in Germany and then over in France. And then, you know, more and more people started to study with him. And then it eventually made its way to the US.
When did it make its way to the US?
It made its way to the US in about the mid 1800s, actually. And at one point in time, our country, we had 20% of all of our physicians were homeopathic physicians.
Wow.
We had over 1,000 homeopathic pharmacies, 100 homeopathic hospitals. The majority of all of the medical colleges, Stanford, New York Medical College, the college in Chicago, had homeopathic medical degrees.
Okay, so what happened? Like, I'm sure there's a whole history here, but like,
Right.
Now I'm curious, like, what happened?
Right. It was in the 1920s when there were two individuals who were very much influential in our country, John Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie. They had big interest in the pharmaceutical industry at that time. And they used their influence to commission a study of medical education in the United States and Canada. It's commonly known as the Flexner Report. But the caveat to that was the ranking of all of the different modalities out there, not just, you know, what we refer to as conventional Western medicine, homeopathy, other Eastern medicine modalities, chiropractic at the time as well too, all had to be rated and evaluated against each other, utilizing only a drug-based curriculum. Well, that right there eliminated pretty much everything else but conventional medicine. They then at the time also used their influence in Congress, that Congress then ruled that the American Medical Association is the only body that could issue medical licenses in the United States. And any medical college that wanted to receive funding had to adhere to the drug-based, research-based protocol only.
Was there any sort of like uprising?
There was a little bit, but at the same time, there was a lot of infighting that suddenly was happening between homeopathic physicians and what's referred to as allopathic or conventional physicians, because then suddenly there was a slandering of each other's profession. There was physicians who used to work together and consult together were now shunning one another. And you can't really blame the universities and the hospitals when they're being told, okay, if you want to continue to
Yeah.
receive the money, you have to adjust your ways of practice and what you are going to offer to fit this model and this model
Well, and I
only.
imagine like there's, especially at that time, like conventional medicine and things, there were things that were working too, so it's kind of like they kind of got to figure out both ways, and what's best may not be the only thing, right? So, yeah, that's really interesting.
So if a lot of these colleges lost the funding, how were homeopaths trained then? And how are they trained now? So like what do you need to do to become a homeopath? What does the education look like?
Well, I just want to make sure it's clear. I'm a certified classical homeopath. And in our country, homeopaths do not have medical licenses. So there is no medical license for homeopath. If you are someone who has gone and received a medical license, like naturopathic doctors or functional medicine doctors, and then go and get training for a homeopath, then you can say you have a medical license. However, it's that license doesn't necessarily cover homeopathy. So there are schools within the United States. There's schools over in Europe as well that are practitioner programs. I went to a 4-year homeopathic practitioner program in Minneapolis, and it's 2 years of didactic training, 2 years of clinical training. You work with a supervisor in the clinic, such as you would in other kind of modalities. And then once you complete your schooling, you then have the opportunity to sit for the certification exam, which is from the Council of Homeopathic Education
Wow, that sounds
and
intense.
certification.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Really intense too.
Mhm. Well, I can imagine how much education has to go behind it because there's so many remedies, which we're going to touch on in a different episode as the actual remedies. But like to me, it has to be overwhelming when you have so many options and you're using plants, right? I believe is it mostly plants? Like how are these, from an overview, a high standpoint, what are homeopathic remedies made from? Are they made all from plants?
They're not all made from plants. They are made from anything in nature: plants, animal substances, minerals. Think of anything on the periodic table.
Cool.
Anything in nature can be made into a homeopathic remedy. So yes, there's thousands and thousands and thousands. The one thing that all of the instructors, anytime anyone starts homeopathy school, is don't worry, it's an open book profession.
No kidding.
You do not have to memorize 5,000 remedies.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, for sure.
How incredible though. It's just so cool. Like I talk about, this is kind of off topic, but I talk with my kids about different types of sugar, like when we're eating, like just within our home of what we're consuming. And I'm often like, well, this is sugar that's been refined, like in a factory, and this is God sugar. And it's like, I almost look at this as like God medicines, right? Like it's things straight from nature. And it's really amazing. I love that. So how did you decide to get into this profession? Because obviously this is really cool, really science-based. What, did you always want to be a homeopath? Like, how did you get into this?
No, I did not grow up very holistically minded. I even into adulthood. What got me down the path of changing the way that I think about health was my kids. My kids were, when they were younger, struggling with some ADD, ADHD, and I knew of no other way. So, we worked with our amazing pediatrician. We loved our pediatrician. He was fantastic. And they were on medication for 2 years. And it worked. It worked. They paid attention in school, kept their hands to themselves, all of the things that were concerns. But there were a lot of side effects from the medication. And it just got to a point where I knew like there's got to be something else. And so I started doing some research about different types of natural ways to help kids with ADD, ADHD. And then I got invited to a talk by another homeopath, classical homeopath. And it made sense to me. It made sense to me. So I my whole family started working with her. And then fast forward 10 years of us working with her. And my previous career, I was a civil engineer, and I never really wanted to be a civil engineer. It's a great career, but I always was looking for, what else can I do? What else can I do? And my boys were in high school, and I saw information about the school that our homeopath had gone to, and they were enrolling. And I thought, oh, I would have loved to have done that. And I had a couple people in my life, my husband being one of them, saying, you should go do it now. And my first thought is, I got 2 kids in high school. They're about to go to college. Like, I can't go back to school. But it just stuck with me. And I just said, well, I'm going to see if I can do this, because it homeopathy and working with our homeopath, I have no qualms saying saved my family and my family's health. And I wanted to be able to bring that to other people.
For sure. So did you, obviously going through schooling is going to, like you said, it took years to go through it, but you said that your boys were on medications for a while. And then, so once you started diving into homeopathy a little bit more, did you get off of medications for them? Did they try some more natural remedies? Were they, like, through college, did they still find different solutions that were able to help them? How did their journey continue?
Yeah, they continued to work with our homeopath. We also started to make other changes within our family structure, like more non-toxic living and, better eating and things like that. But the homeopathy is our family's main go-to for our health when we need assistance. And they're older now, they're 22 and 24, and they have chosen to continue on working with our homeopath. It eventually becomes their choice. They're adults, but yeah, it has supported them beautifully through puberty and early adulthood, and now as they're kind of going on in their lives.
That's amazing. I love the story behind.
And you guys can't see Sandy, but she's got tears in her eyes because this is just so impactful for her.
Yeah. Well, and what we find is that so many people in the health and wellness space, they start their business because they experienced a pain point and it changed their lives, and they want to help people to not experience that as well. So thank you for your pursuing your career and taking a leap of faith in a really scary time period, I'm sure. Like when your boys were going to college, you probably thought, oh, I'm just kind of stuck in my career, but yeah, you're making a difference. So one more question I have is, when you're taking a homeopathic remedy, how does it actually work to heal their symptoms?
Okay, so the way that I like to explain this is, let's think about when we take a medication over the counter, whether it's ibuprofen, Tylenol, a prescription, even some herbs and supplements. That's chemistry, right? Those are chemical compounds put together that have a chemical reaction to our bodies. That's what they're intended for. Homeopathy works in the realm of physics. So physics, we know, is the study of forces and energy on matter. So everyone can think of gravity. Everyone knows about gravity, right? We know about the energy force of gravity because we see what happens to that piece of matter, that rock, that book, whatever that we drop, and goes to the ground. So we know the energy and the force is there that forces the action on the matter. Homeopathic remedies are acting within the energetic forces within ourselves, thus causing a physical reaction to the matter, which is our bodies.
Wow. Okay, let's get nerdy here because I'm like, I want to know more. Okay. So, man, how does that actually happen? Like, so you take a remedy, let's say it's one of the little ball forms, right?
Mm-hmm.
You put it underneath your tongue and it gets absorbed into your system. Then what?
So what I think is important to point out, though, is, which we haven't touched on yet, is where homeopathy works. I've just talked about how the remedies work and related to physics. So within ourselves is, in homeopathy, we refer to it as the vital force. It's our life force. It's what keeps us alive. It's what stimulates our immune system. It's what heals us. It's what, gives us the fight or flight responses and our emotions. That's the vital force. Your vital force's goal is to keep you healthy and happy and alive. And when something happens to us, whether it's physical, bacterial, viral, pathogen, an injury, a mental emotional shock, a trauma, it impacts the vital force. So you can think of it as like a river. Envision a river that's flowing and you're watching the water flow by. And it's the current that's taking the water someplace. And then you notice that there's a tree that fell into that river. Well, the current's still moving that water, but it has to divert it around the rock, the tree, whatever. And then it can create some erosion on the shore, right? Unintended consequence, the erosion on the shore. When something impacts your vital force, it produces symptoms as a way of saying, hey, I'm keeping you alive. I'm keeping you going. I need some help here, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something's off.
Something's off. So when you take a homeopathic remedy, it's acting in the realm of your vital force.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing.
I think that's awesome. And I think that we're definitely going to be diving into that in the next episode too.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's hit pause for now. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about homeopathic remedies and really dive into this. So let's continue that conversation there. But I do want to let everybody listening know that Sandy has offered an incredible opportunity for listeners here. $10 off an acute care consultation and 10% off a home remedy kit. We're going to talk about kits in another episode as well. So make sure you tune into those. If you are not in the Appleton, Wisconsin area, she does offer virtual services. So you can definitely take advantage of this. All you have to do is when you contact her, just reference the Motherhood Alliance podcast. So Sandy, can you tell listeners, how can they connect with you? Like, do you have a website? Are you on social media? What's the best way to connect with you?
I do have a website. It is sourcehealinghome.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Easiest way is probably just to go to my website and send me an email or a message through my website that way. And then we can go from there.
Awesome. This has been such an enlightening conversation already. We can't wait to continue with more episodes with you. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving a rating or review or sharing it directly with a friend who could benefit from the information? We know that you're a busy mom or caregiver, and our goal is to make your life easier by bringing tips and tricks directly from experts into your earbuds. By sharing this episode with someone you love, you can play a critical role in helping to make their life easier as well. We appreciate your time and thank you for being a part of the Motherhood Alliance family.